Hey, what up, guys? Coming to you this morning with what's next on undefeated IBF super middleweight champion Caleb Plant of the United States. Plant is currently my number 6 super middleweight in the world right now. He last fought in February when he took on made a mandatory defense of his IBF title against Vincent Feigenboots of Germany. He dominated the action against the little-known Feigenboots, stopping him in the 10th round of that fight, and is now pushing forward. So the big question now is what's next for Caleb Plant? Well, originally coming into the year, him and David Benavidez, the undefeated WBC champion, wanted to face each other in a unification bout. They both had, it looked like Plant was going to be facing Feigenboots, and it looked like Benavidez was going to make a mandatory against Avni Yildirim, but that fight has, it's not going to happen next. We'll get to that when we talk about Benavidez a little more, but, but that has kind of unraveled and doesn't seem to be the case. So let's run through the top 10, see what the possibilities are for Caleb Plant, and go from there. We start with number 1, the WBA regular champion, Canelo Alvarez. Well, Alvarez offered the fight to Caleb Plant, but Plant said he was going to do what Kovalev did, overwork himself, and get right back in the gym to take a fight with Canelo. De La Hoya and them were kind of, prodding around, seeing if Plant would be interested. Plant passed on it, so they moved on. So not going to happen now. It's disappointing because the virus kind of gives Plant more time to recover, and, but he didn't know that in advance. So, so Plant not going to get a crack at De La Hoya now. Number 2 is the undefeated WBA super champion, Callum Smith. Now, from the standpoint of the fact that they're both undefeated champions, I think the fight's possible, but I really think Eddie Hearn with Matchroom is trying to keep Plant in-house to face Matchroom fighters, and I really think Al Heyman with the PBC is trying to keep Plant in-house to face PBC fighters. So I don't think they're going to lock up. I guess the possibility's there if the two sides are willing to work together, but I'm leaning towards the no. And because I really think Al Heyman eventually wants to put together the Benavidez and Plant unification bout so he can have, a 2 belt holder at 168. So that's what I think is going to go down. So I'm saying no to that one. Number 3 is former 2-time champion Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs is with Matchroom. Conceivably, if the two sides again wanted to work together, I could see it happening, but I really think Eddie Hearn's going to want to match Danny up against his own guys and set up a showdown between him and probably Callum Smith, at some point in the future, and keep Danny Jacobs in line for possibly a rematch with Canelo at some point if Danny can become a world champion and beat Callum Smith. So I think Eddie Hearn has a plan, and I don't think Danny really respects Plant altogether. I mean, maybe as a fighter, but he came out recently in an interview and said that Plant's the weakest of all the champions at 168. So I really don't think this fight has any legs to it and is going to happen next. Number 4 is the undefeated WBC champion David Benavidez. So I talked about how everything came unraveled for their long-term plan. Well, part of the reason was Avni Yildirim, the mandatory challenger to Benavidez, was supposed to be next, and then, Plant was making his defense against Feigenboots, and then the long-term plan was them to fight each other later in the year. But Avni Yildirim got injured and is still due to fight in a mandatory fight against Benavidez, so Benavidez went on and signed and to take on Romer Angulo, and now everything's been pushed back due to the coronavirus. So by the time Benavidez comes back, he's gonna face Angulo next. They've already been approved for Arizona once the pandemic's lifted for those two guys to lock horns. There's no date on it yet, but they've already been approved to fight. And then he's gonna have to make a mandatory against Avni Yildirim. So I'm hoping Benavidez gets both those fights out of the way. Plant gets another defense before the end of the year, and then these two guys can lock horns early next year. But got to see, got to wait and see what happens and go from there. But it's so not going to happen next. Next at number 5 is the undefeated WBO champion, Billy Joe Saunders. Saunders is fighting Canelo next, so no chance of this one. I mean, most likely facing Canelo. But even if he weren't, again, this is another matchroom guy, Billy Joe. And I really think Eddie Hearn wants to keep him in-house so all his guys can face each other. But Billy Joe is supposed to be facing Canelo next, but we'll see. I mean, the coronavirus is really hurting things, so we'll see how that works out. Number 6 is Plant. Number 7 is Caleb Truax. Or no, number 7 is Anthony Durrell, the former 2-time champion. You know, I think the fight's possible, but I'm not sure Durrell wants the fight. I think Plant would take the fight all day. These guys are both PBC guys, and Plant wants a big fight and a big opponent. But I'm not sure Durrell wants this fight. You know, I don't know why, because I think it'd be a good one. But coming off the loss, I think Durrell might want to face lower-level opposition before he goes into a big fight. So right now, I got to say, I don't think it's going to happen, but it could happen because they're both PBC guys. And Durrell feels like he fought well in his last fight against Benavidez, which he did. But he feels like he would have won that fight if he didn't get cut. So does he want to go straight in, especially against like a slicker boxer like Caleb Plant? I'm leaning towards the no, but it definitely could happen. Next at number 8 is former champion Caleb Truax. Truax used to hold the IBF title, and he's currently Plant's highest rated contender. If Plant cannot get a big fight, which doesn't look like he's going to get any of the top dogs in, or Durrell doesn't want to fight him, I think this fight makes the most sense and is what he should do. Truax is a game veteran. He, beat James DeGale 2-3 years ago, lost to him by a tough decision in a rematch. Hasn't lost since, got a couple wins, low-level opposition. He didn't really get a chance to mandate his title shot because, injuries, cuts in the fight with Quillen, and an injury in a rematch caused, before the rematch caused that fight not to happen in 2019 for Truax to mandate, but he's still the highest rated guy. There's not a number 1 or number 2 ranked fighter for the IBF title right now. Truax is number 3. He's the highest rated guy. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It would, somewhat of a stay busy opponent, but he's a top 10 guy still, and he still is credible. He's a former champ. So I think this fight would be perfect for Plant next if he can't get Durrell in the ring or one of the other top guys. So I think this fight is very possible and likely. Number 9 is Lionel Thompson. Another guy that is possible. I think Plant would rather face somebody like Durrell or Truax next. But Thompson is with the PBC. He beat the same guy that Caleb Plant beat. He beat Jose Ustadigan in his last one. So I think it's something he should consider if he gets desperate and he can't get Truax or Durrell to fight him. And then finally at number 10 is John Ryder. John Ryder's another matchroom guy. He's likely going to get Callum Smith or Danny Jacobs next, so I don't see him as a possibility. So that's it for the top 10 with Caleb Plant. Now, what do I think Plant's going to do next? I honestly do believe Caleb Truax is the favorite, is the front runner. I think he's probably going to get the fight. And, Plant also might be able to sell it as a mandatory title fight again. That way, when the Benavidez fight comes up, they're not crossing over, oh, well, I got to make a mandatory now, so we got to push it off further. I think it makes a lot of sense. Why not face him? I think Lionel Thompson or Anthony Durrell are probably right after that in line, and you never know. So that's what's next on my number 6 super middleweight in the world right now, the undefeated IBF super middleweight champion, Caleb Plant. Hope you enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.